Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon, and you're listening to a podcast which is all about the Irish League, where we have our Premiership champions all but confirmed. Write it in black ink if you want to, as following their captivating draw with Linfield at Windsor Park, Larne will recapture the Gibson Cup this season, barring, of course, a biblical swing of goal difference and results this weekend. We're going to share our reaction to that, plus Portadown, they have secured their promotion back to the Irish League big time by winning the championship. Glentoran, they've confirmed Declan Devine as their full-time boss, and we'll run our eye over the Northern Ireland Football Awards on this, your latest weekly edition of Kicking Match. The final whistle has sounded only minutes ago at Windsor Park. I am joined by the Belfast Telegraph Sports reporter, Stuart McKinley.
Good evening, Peter. What an evening it has been. What a game that was.
We are reacting to this pretty much as it's just happened. I can see all the Larne fans waving the flags. Andy Ryan's saluting the fans. Tierna Lynch is getting interviewed because the game between themselves and Linfield ended 1-1. And we have our all but champions of 2023-2024 of the Linfield Premiership. Larne have done it. They have went back to back and are, barring of course Linfield scoring 30 million goals, are going to be champions of the Irish League. First off, what's your reaction to them finally sealing the deal? It looked all but nailed down after Tuesday night. They've done the business there at Windsor Park.
Virtual champions is a phrase I would coin at this stage. You always say the best team wins the league. The champions always deserve it. And over the stretch, Larne have been very good. We always talk about it's one thing winning the league. It's completely different winning back to back. They went on an unbelievably long unbeaten run, which still may not have got them it. That unbelievable twist last Tuesday night has just played a big part in Larne winning the title. It was crazy. Last Tuesday when Larne were ahead and Coleraine were ahead, and it was looking like being a great night for Larne. Then with that turnaround early in the second half, that was amazing. Linfield took the lead, Glentoran scored, but that was nothing compared to what happened late in the game. But I think that's what the split brings you. It brings you nights like that. And then what Linfield have done with changing the schedule of fixtures, where the top two used to meet in the first game.
Was the first game, yeah. First game, and now it's the fourth.
And that was more of a security thing to avoid the risk of sort of powder keg games post Morgan Day back in 2005. But I think changing it back was giving us what we've got tonight: a pulsating game, a really good spectacle for the league.
Focusing on the game, it had so much in it. It was a wonderful little jambalaya of a potential championship deciding game. It raced out of the traps early with intensity and speed of play, then it slowed down later in that second half, but there was that big push as well. Big moments, huge calls. Both teams had to keep their nerve at times, and a draw probably was a fair result at the end of the 90 minutes. But of course, it wasn't really about the 90 minutes. It was about what was on the line. Linfield simply needed to win, and it was fascinating from the get-go. One of the calls of the season from David Healy, in comes 16-year-old Braden Graham. I think that's his full name at the minute, 16-year-old Braden Graham, to start the game.
Yeah.
And from there, it looked to have worked almost instantly. I think this season I have seen more shrewd moves from David Healy than I've seen from any Irish League manager in a season. Time and time again, he's made bold decisions, interesting decisions, and they've come off really well. I'm thinking about that game against Cliftonville where they nullified them. They've come up here. They've had a problem with Larne in previous years. They're able to get that monkey off their back in cup competitions. And then in here, he wanted that bit of zip. He wanted that bit of energy up top. And Braden Graham scored that big goal against Larne in the cup a couple of months ago. So clearly Healy saw something in this young player, getting a bit of confidence recently. His spark was what got them that corner against Crusaders, and to start with him said there's a matchup here that's going to work, and from early on you could see what the matchup was. It was to get a Kane Bolger, and he kept running, he kept using the ball brilliantly, and his fearlessness I felt was infectious across the team. And outside of just the team decision there, I think Healy knew that he didn't have a full 90 minutes in this team, and he wanted to take control of this game early, get the goals, and then try and hold out, because we didn't see any substitutes from him until maybe 10 minutes before time. He stuck with the team that he had till late in the game, and I think a part of that is because he didn't have a huge amount of choice of game changers on that bench, bar a roll of the dice. So that was a big call, seemed to work, and they got that early enough goal for a bit of fortune coming from the corner, but that was coming at that stage of the game.
It was. I agree with you there. David Healy was never going to die wondering tonight. He picked the team. He had them set up. They were going for it from the word go. And I suppose he had to. It was a must-win game for Linfield. Any other outcome, as we've seen, with it being a draw, wasn't going to be enough. David was going for it. Linfield started on the front foot. It was a game like, probably only at this stage of the season you're going to see a game like that, because it's not like a cup final. Because a cup final would be a bit cagey, maybe both teams trying to play their way in, or it's not like a normal league game. It's one team who needs to win the game to have any chance of getting their hands on the trophy at the end of it. Them going for it. The others maybe happy enough just to soak up that pressure. But Linfield went for it. Yeah, the goal was fortunate, but that's what you do when you're putting teams under pressure, and that's what happens. Um, and Graham's youthful exuberance was really, really exciting to watch. There was a couple of times where maybe looked there was a little bit of nerves or inexperience, that maybe he maybe didn't quite make the right decision. But you expect that. He's 16. He's not going to get everything perfect. But you start to think, why is this kid only making his first start here tonight? Why did he not play it a little bit more? But it was exciting to see him. He did fade a little bit as the game went on, but that was just maybe a team thing as well. As Lauren got a bit more to grip with the thing. Um, but yeah, it was David went for it. It was good to see that Linfield were going for it right from the start, rather than trying to play their way in and hope that they got a 1-0 out of it. And they may have got a 1-0 win out of it, only for the penalty incident. And for me it's a penalty. It's odd for a player like Joel Cooper, with the experience and the ability, the quality that he has, to get just on that wrong side. But maybe that's just the fact that he isn't the defender, and maybe his teammates will be a little bit annoyed that he did make the push, because I think he's got to trust his goalkeeper and trust his defence in that situation a little bit more.
Cosgrove has a peg on him, to be fair, but in that situation he had a lot to do, and it's a game of percentages, and hindsight's 2020. You are going to say maybe if you just let him give it a go, it could have been a different outcome. But that's across the game there. Yeah, as soon as I saw it was one of those penalty. It was, and that took a bit of steam out of Linfield at that time after playing with so much vigor and control of the game. Excellent game from Miller. It was from a leadership point of view, you can see what Chris Shields does to that team. They looked to him constantly, and he had to have a cool head throughout that game. And bar one moment of almost madness, he played a pretty flawless game, and he was everywhere across the pitch from deep and up top. Larne, I would describe their performance as coy. They knew what they were getting into. They knew that they were going against a real firecracker in Linfield, and all they had to do was try and limit the emotion, calm it down, cool it down, and it looked as though with their own injuries at the back line, Bolger and Roshan Williams were somewhat walking wounded, or at least didn't have as much game time as you'd want key backline players going into that game in that big pitch. And it looked as though play deep, flood the box with bodies. And that really did frustrate Linfield, especially as the game went on. They were getting a lot of success out wide, outright was where a lot of the play was coming. But when they finally entered the final third, the balls were being pumped into the box, and with their height and just simply the amount of space that was free in the box, which was limited, they were getting no joy. Linfield were you were really relying on Fitzpatrick to try and pull a rabbit out of a hat or to fall to one of your creative players in there, and time again it just wasn't happening, and they put the pressure on the Linfield attack. They almost accepted that Linfield were going to come on to them, but they had the strength there to withhold that. Flew by the seat of their pants at times, but they were resolute and nullified a lot of that Linfield team. Larne, we'll talk about their big run into this, but the final few steps, the final few weeks, maybe the last month and a half, I think they've been hampered significantly by injuries to Leroy Miller, Ives then in the Cup, Bolger. They've been without Sean Want, and that's just some of the players who've been out. That's not counting players who perhaps were walking wounded, weren't fully fit. We saw Randall come off. I don't think we saw a sterling performance from either Ryan or Bonus in that game. So they have got there, but that's what a league season's all about. You build yourself that platform, and that's an amazing platform points that they had, and then it's just about seeing it out, and they've done that very well. If you can say across the last, if we played 96 minutes, the past 97 minutes of football they've played in the league, it doesn't just come down to that, but it's been key.
Yeah, you sort of alluded to it there. I thought both teams did really, really well in taking the emotion out of the game as professionally and as focused as they could, and the focus was slightly different for both teams. Linfield's was on the intensity of going forward and attacking. Larne's was on having to quell that and defend. Linfield never, till maybe the very, very end, when there's a couple of balls into the box, just didn't have the same sort of quality as you want. Attacking Linfield were quite composed, and there was a couple of great little passages of play. There was that one where I actually thought Kirk Miller should have had a shot rather than trying to pull it back across. Graham nicks it away from Fitzpatrick.
Because McGee was getting a bit of fortune there as well, and there was little link-ups there from that side. And, Cooper, like we talk about some of the players for Larne who looked to be walking wounded, maybe not fully fit, and you could see there that Joel Cooper was probably in that bracket and wasn't getting much joy. He had moments, but it's not the same player that would happily get the ball to feet and try and do something. He just didn't have that same stretch and pull that he had probably earlier on in the season, and he's been coming back from injury, and he tried to make an impact but just didn't have the same grip on the game.
I think that's a factor, plus him playing in a slightly different position, more of a deeper wing back role rather than an out and out winger, an out and out sort of left of front three, where he has been really, really dangerous. So that kind of blunted him a little bit. Miller was doing what he does. His delivery in boxes has always been first class. Absolutely superb, and that's where the goal came from. But that you say there about Larne and the players that they've had missing all season. Leroy Miller was Player of the Year last year, head and shoulders above everyone else for me, and he just hasn't had that run or been able to have that same impact. When you lose that, you've got to replace that somehow, and I think that's been more of a collective for Larne rather than one person standing out. I know Andy Ryan was in contention for Player of the Year at the weekend, but that's what happens when you score a lot of goals. But I do think overall it's been a real team thing for Larne this year, which has started from the back with the amount of clean sheets they've kept, so few goals conceded, and that's the old saying: defense is win your league.
It will go down for me as an historically excellent back line. It will be the one that we pointed to as truly defenses win you championships, and especially this year where Linfield and Larne have pushed each other so close. The points total that Larne and Linfield have already would win the league pretty much every season over the past 5 years, and that just shows you how this season for both of them they've had to keep an almost perfect jotter week to week. It hasn't exactly worked out, especially for Linfield and losing these leads, but Larne had a bumpy start to the season where they conceded the guts of a fifth of their league goals in a manic evening against Dungannon. But from there, they've lost what, two league games all season. I know draws can sometimes hide bad performances when it comes to the end of the season, but they've stood up and they've rode the wave. You talk about some of those players who are injured. I think last season that March the title was based on a fortuitous clean bill of health. They didn't get that this year, but with their big squad, they were able to take that hit. And yes, we even saw today that's when they're fully stretched, where Miller's playing out wide and you have others coming in. But they've signed well, as they have done over the past couple of years. And I think about this time last season where I titled the podcast where Larne were finally announced as champions, or they won the league at that point, and it was that question mark of, are they sowing the seeds of a dynasty? The way that needs to progress, if you're going to start putting them in that category, is you need to win trophies and you need to do it back to back. They've done that. They've repeated what Linfield have done for pretty much most of their history, but if we're looking at recent Irish League history, they've now done what the mid 2010s Crusaders team did. Of course, they did 3 and 4 years. Accent side, Heatley, Owens, Morrow, Coates, all the rest, Billy Joe Burns. That Tommy Breslin, Cliftonville side did. Gormley, Boyce, Curran, McMullen, all those players. Larne can't stand still. They need to keep pushing when it comes to signings, when it comes to infrastructure, coaching, all the rest of it. And this year, I've seen a lot of other teams push forward. And mainly Linfield have learnt their lessons from last year and they've come very, very close. What do you think now this says about Larne? I think there might be a couple of changes coming this summer and some parts of this team that still needs a bit of work. I'm probably holding them to like a Irish League super team standard, but to achieve this 2 years in a row, show with a majority of the same team, shows the quality and the squad they've built here.
I haven't even finished this season yet. The Larne have only just won the title, and I already can't wait the next season because Larne are going to build. They'll sign. Linfield will sign. Cliftonville will improve, and I think we will have a great race with it next year. Larne will look to add a bit more depth. I would have thought they've sustained the injuries very, very well this season to go on and win back-to-back titles. But I would think Tiernan would like a little bit more to be able to challenge and push and compete with his starting 11 and be able to call upon that depth and not to be worrying too much about you know what injuries there might be. Um, they I think are expecting Levi Ives to be back in time for next season after the injury wasn't diagnosed to be as serious as they first feared. And he's been a big signing for them. I know he was someone that you were fancying for Player of the Year and rightly so. Very, very good season. That's the type that they'll be looking for. You go back for history when Glentoran and Linfield were winning titles, they were just going and picking out the best player from somewhere else in the league, maybe a couple of them every summer. And that's really what Larne have done there in getting Levi Ives in. And they've done that and getting bonus in before that. And that might be the market that they're looking for because I think what Larne have done quite well actually has been signing Irish League players, good Irish League players, rather than going outside and bringing in players who maybe didn't quite know the league. They've got a mix, I suppose, of that. But when they've signed Ives, bonus, etc., that's the type that they've been bringing in, and they've done very, very well for them. I remember speaking to David Healy at the start of the season, and he wanted a sort of a tighter, smaller squad with good quality players and experienced players, but he was going to try and get a few young, hungry players in it as well. And it's worked quite well for him. You talk there about sort of the astuteness he's shown throughout the season, and he's nearly got there with that theory. And they haven't fallen massively short, but I think he'll want a little bit more depth and a little bit more quality in just one or two positions to go and challenge again.
The big thing now for Larne, now that they've won the league 2 years in a row, and Linfield know this very well, Europe has to be focused on, it has to be attacked appropriately, and lessons need to be learned for what they've done in the past few years. Because despite Linfield's great push a couple of years ago, if I can bring it up, Linfield fans, and how they were minutes away from Europa Conference League, I think this league is now beyond the isn't this such an amazing fairy tale kind of run to the Europa Conference League. They need to take it seriously. They need to realise that it's in there, and I think they do, to be fair, that it should be in their grasp realistically. We have professional teams who are signing professional players that are improving and are playing at a high standard. And when you see teams from Gibraltar and other smaller nations, Iceland, getting in there via that champions path, and Larne have the better path. Now, they don't have the same kind of seeding that Linfield would have had, but you only get that seeding by overperforming and getting one over. So, look, next year for Larne, that Irish Cup still eludes them. 3 in a row is clearly what they're going to go after. But when they think of recruitment, it will just be beyond trying to improve this team and be in a great position to fight for this league. There has to be one eye on Europe, and how they approach that will be one of the more interesting things to keep an eye on this summer, because they've got a team that know each other, they know how they play, they are very well suited to this style of play and have got great quality all over the pitch. It's now that's where the next level is, isn't it? European football.
Yes, definitely is. Years ago, it was just all about domestic success. If you won the league, the next challenge was to retain it. The next challenge was, can you go and win a double, add a couple of knockout cups to your league title. The landscape of Europe has changed so much, that it's become a bit similar to go back to the 90s, when in Scotland, when Rangers were winning 9 in a row, and the big thing then was, well, we're dominating at home. We've got to try and crack Europe. And they did really, really well in Europe one season, got to what was effectively a semi final. That was pretty much a one off. So I relate that then to the modern day Irish League. And it is, what can you do now in Europe? Can you go and finally break that into that group stage of Conference League? And just, I'm looking at the teams that made it into the group stages this year. There's a team from the Faroe Islands made the group stages of the Conference League.
Yeah.
There's a team from Kosovo, and there's an Icelandic team. Those are the leagues, particularly the Faroes.
Just remind me, what were those teams again? Just pronounce them for us. What teams
It's a
we're talking
team called KI from the Faroes.
about? Was it RFS? I think we all benefit from saying RFS from that, and of course a team from Latvia, as Linfield know well.
I remember years ago when Linfield beat a team called FH from Iceland. Everyone just kept calling them FH rather than calling them Hafnarfjordur.
Yep.
Um,
Oh, look at that.
so we'll just stick with KI from the Faroes. Yeah, if a team from the Faroes can make it into the Europa Conference League group stages, that's where the Irish League teams will be looking at.
And of course,
They can do it, we can do it.
it's like going through the wardrobe. How that could change the league. Like, people would look at Larne and there'll be plenty of people poo-pooing it, comparing to the Man City money team, etc. And I know a lot of people would highlight how much of the infrastructure's been there, that it's not all just went on players, etc., etc. But if they were to get in the Europa Conference League, that is different gravy money. That is truly getting your investment back moving forward, and what you can build on there is a completely different level. And how that then filters down to the rest of the league, we'll have to see. We could be sitting here and this could be an annual thing where Larne just keep on going, and we'll look back on this season and think Linfield had the chance and they never came close again. So congratulations, Larne. I think it's been a very impressive season based on the amount of goals they've not conceded, the amount of wins, the lack of losses. I think they'll be disappointed about their runs in the Cup, no doubt. But they did lose out to the biggest teams opposite them in the end. So there's always something to strive for. But of course, if you're a Larne fan, this is all dreamland 2 years in a row, really, from where they're from. And everybody's looking at Kenny Bruce, no doubt. And I'm sure he'll be delighted, because him and all the team around there, Tiernan Lynch, all the rest, they've done excellently on and off the pitch this year. Highly commendable.
I remember when Kenny Bush came in and he set high targets, and there was probably a lot of people around the league going, "Oh, well, yeah, yeah, heard all this type of thing before, not just in the Irish League." He put his money where his mouth was, and provided that their pitches up to standard this year, he is going to get that Champions League music played at Inver Park. That was always his dream, and fair play to him. There's only so much money gets you. You've got to deliver. You've got to do the hard work on the training ground, and you've got to do it on the pitch. And they've done it. Credit to them. You maybe sort of a bit of pressure not too long ago when there was people questioning if Keenan was going to deliver. That was only coming maybe 2 years, 18 months ago, even. So he was brave and he stuck with Tiernan. And yeah, looking back at that, that was a very, very wise decision.
Moving back to Linfield, they've missed out on being champions once again. That's 2 years now where David Healy has not won the league. It comes still off that disappointing game against RFS at Windsor Park. Not that that was the catalyst of it. I think Larne have played a bigger role here, but where does this leave this team now? I felt as though there was a chance after that league win in 22, talking about the fans. Did he have a decision to make as manager in regards to his future at Linfield? There was talk this season about being linked to other jobs. He clearly has a job on his hands to build this team back up and to be champions once again. And I've talked highly about him this year in the moves that he's made from a tactical point of view, team building point of view. Do you think there should be any fear that he might not be around as Linfield boss next year? And subsequently, are Linfield in a rebuild or are they in tweaking? Because they came so close. How much work is required here?
I think it's more of a sort of cosmetic job is needed at Linfield rather than a massive revamp. They've got enough quality in there to have another really, really good go. They've missed players too. Kyle McLean's got player of the year, deservedly so. But they've missed a player like Stephen Fallon for most of the season. Absolute top player. So they get him in, cliche, they get him in, it's like a new signing. They signed Robbie McDade, who's hardly kicked the ball for them through injury. I'm not sure how long it is before he'll be back. It could be well into next season. Those two players had so much. Ewan East has missed the tail end of the season here. He's another one who was a great signing. He hit the ground running. He's already a big favourite with the Linfield support. I wouldn't think that David needs to go out and do an awful lot in the summer. One of the factors that people might think about squad wise with Linfield, if you go back to earlier on in the season, was the departures of John Robertson and Jack Scott, without getting into the reasons behind that. Um, but they were two players that Linfield brought in to be relying on to do them a big, big job this season, and didn't really replace them. Certainly didn't replace Robertson. Up front, you could say that Ethan McGee came in and was a replacement for Scott, and Ethan McGee's shown his quality week in, week out. Again, even tonight, played very, very well. So, yeah, like I say, I don't think Linfield need a massive revamp. Will David still be there? I would expect so. Don't know how serious any interest was in David in the past. Obviously, nothing has come off in terms of him getting a job in England, Scotland, and it's not that he's failed in any way. Maybe when he doesn't win the league, his stock isn't quite as high as it would have been if they had it done, and that may be something that just doesn't get the attention that he might have done otherwise.
Blues fans, they'll be hurting this week, seeing that they came close. Yes, they have the Irish Cup, but they'll be disappointed that it's now 2 years without a title. They'll also be worried about how much momentum maybe this Larne steam train could build up over the next few years this summer. They'll look at the success that Ethan McGee has been at the club since January, how Fitzpatrick has helped them get more goals. They'll also look at Larne and think he spent money on Ives, great player, and done the business. Brought in Gallagher from Cliftonville in January in an area they probably would have liked to have had players in. Spent money on bonus and that's worked out. They took a punt on Leroy Miller, took him full time. We all knew his quality. Became Player of the Year the next year. Will Blues fans look at that and say, we want Linfield to beat? Because they're one of the most attractive teams to go to. They have been since their existence in the league, and especially over the past 20, 30 years. They've always been attractive for players. Will their fans go, we need to get out there, be more aggressive, and start snapping up? They might be slightly undercooked as a prospect. We need to start hoovering up the best of these Irish League talents and making a great team, because that's what the success of David Jeffrey was based on. Now they have a lot more challengers to sign these players, but do you think they'll call on David Healy and the Linfield higher-ups to be more aggressive, get in these players like McGee and others to try and build this team on? Or do you think they'll look at the success of Finlayson, East, the ones at the back, and a couple of others that they brought in from England, Scotland? You probably look at Larne and go the way they brought in Ryan, Cliffville bringing in Wilson and Stewart and the likes of them. Where do you think Blues fans' heads will be at? Look within, take punts abroad.
I think Linfield fans will expect Linfield to sign the best players that they can for what they're going to pay out in wages and possibly transfer fees.
By the way, I know they're not mutually exclusive. I know you can get a little selection of your
Yeah.
charcuterie board, but
Yes, but like I said earlier, historically Linfield and Glentoran went and picked out the best player from another club. McGee's part of that. This season, Linfield will quality and the ability of every potential signing throughout the Irish League. That's how they work. But Larne will as well. And Europa Conference League football could be huge in that. Because if you're playing in a lower league in Scotland or England, you're never going to play in Europe. But if you can come to Northern Ireland, get playing in the group stages of a European competition, it's huge for your career.
Do you see Linfield perhaps changing tack when it comes to transfer fees? They haven't, in recent times, been as forthcoming to shell out in the same way that we've seen Larne and maybe Glentoran do. They did pay money for McGee, and they did pay money eventually for Fitzpatrick, but there was a lot of protracted negotiations. They'd probably say they were able to bring down it to a fair and realistic price. But I'm thinking of some of the big players that could be out there, maybe beyond them now, maybe Benji McGee elsewhere. Do you think we could see Linfield change and their reaction might be, here is young player we like, throw money on the table, try and get a Ben Kennedy, for example, and we see them putting money on the table that they hadn't done as a reaction? My gut tells me they'll stick to their guns. And look, I think Braden Graham, there's a lot more young players where that came from in there. Oftentimes they are whisked away before they get the chance to develop in that Linfield team. But I'm sure there's more where that came from. I think they're going to stick to their guns. But in turn, I can see a big statement signing this summer if they want to make a statement, pretty much, if they want to say, we're not taking this lying down.
Linfield are a very pragmatic club when it comes to transfers and always have been. But if it's the right player, they'll go high in order to get them. And if that means also keeping them out of the clutches of the teams that are their rivals in the league, they'll make sure that they get that player. They have to stretch themselves. Don't necessarily see them going down the road of the six-figure sum, the £100,000 that we've seen thrown around. Don't see Linfield going all that way, but they've spent the money to get Ethan McGee because they thought he's the right player for us. And they've done the same with Fitzpatrick because he was probably the striker that was there on the market. Crusaders had been keen on before, so they had to pay the money to get him. I think they would do that.
Before we leave things that have went down this evening, interesting time to announce this bit of news. Declan Devine is the now new permanent manager of Glentoran. This comes off the back of not exactly a sterling selection of results since he took over with this team that's not his team, trying to make this faltering squad of players work. So far, he hasn't been able to do that and knit it all together. He really hit out on his players from their result against Cliftonville on Saturday, called them out, put them to rights there in the media, and now here Monday evening, just as the final whistle of the game is about to wrap up at Windsor Park, they've announced Declan Devine's the manager. Interesting choice to do this now before the end of the season, especially when so many people were hyping up now that there was a chance that other managers lurking in the shadows could now see them maybe given an opportunity now that it's an uphill struggle slightly for Glentoran to try and get European football. But clearly there's something they've liked in their time working closely with them, and they've backed their man regardless what happens in the European playoff.
It certainly is an appointment based on results, given the fact that they've drawn one and then lost three in a row. Um, and what is it a case of, oh, we're not going to let Larne have all the attention for winning the league. We're going to make our own announcement. It The timing of it is a big surprise, and the announcement itself to me was a bit of a shock because I thought his post-match interview on Saturday um, sent out a message to me that I know I'm not staying, so I'm just going to be totally honest here and tell everyone what I think. I didn't think it was a way to win over players. I really didn't. Um, so he's going to have to try and win them over in another way. He's got a big job on his hands, considering you've got is it a dozen players as a contract, um, and maybe that's why they've gone down this road of let's get this done now so we can get players sorted out now this week, next week before playoffs, and not worry whether we're going to win the playoffs or not. You're staying. Let's get a squad built so we can try and revive this thing because at best they're going to finish. Well, they're going to finish fifth in the league. That's what it and for a team that started last season like a house on fire, and by October everyone thought that they were going to run away with the title, and for then not to challenge it in the end, and then for not to challenge this season, to be fifth is not where this was supposed to go for Glentoran on this journey.
I think House on Fire is a good way to describe it because it was on fire, the whole thing caught, and now finally it's somewhat it completely burnt down, and
It
there's
burned
now
down
just the
very quickly.
ashes of that side, and the ashes is what will remain because it's that side that was there running away with the league 11 games into the season. It how much of it will be there come September. They are a team I would worry about from a rebuild point of view, not being able to really hit the ground running because of so many deals are happening now or been happening since January where people come out of contract and pre-contracts can be signed that they are leaving themselves in a difficult position. And I'm sure there's deals that have been signed, but whoever the manager is needs to get in there, keep the players that he wants to keep, and start bringing in players that he wants to have before they've signed their immediate future away to somebody else. And clearly Devine has put forward a proposal to say these are the players that I want to keep and I don't. And I think from Saturday, and as at the game, youth will play a big role in that. Maybe they'll try and do a mini version of what Linfield used to do in previous years and start look lower in the league and try and pick out the best of the rest of the league. Might not be as glamorous, flashy, and exciting, but I think the key to the success for Glentoran long term, and you got to think about it long term rather than year after year trying to have a slight tilt rebuild. Sometimes you do need to take it right back to the studs, and it wouldn't be the worst thing to try and bleed in whoever it might be. If it's going to be Murphy, McToll, Russell, Fisher, like if this is the main body of the squad moving forward, they might not be the finished article right now, but they could be with a bit of seasoning and a season behind them, you know. So they picked their man, and it's a big summer for a lot of teams. But for Glentoran, there's going to be changes, and I think we'll have to see the way it all pans out. Europe will play a role in this as well if it was to come their way, despite that being unlikely. What their expectations will be.
For all we know, and it wouldn't surprise me if this was the case, maybe some of those players that Glentoran are out of contract are ones that they're happy to move on anyway. I'm not saying Reece Marshall is one they would have wanted to move on, but is he going to be missed massively? He spent an awful lot of time out injured, and there are other players there that have been brought in. They haven't delivered. They're going to finish fifth in the league, so that's as much of a signal that a lot of these players haven't delivered as you're going to get. So maybe letting some of those players go will actually be okay. It'll free up wages to then go and refresh the squad. If they can persuade Ali Pur to part with a few more quid, maybe they'll be going out and spending transfer fees as well. So it might
They
make,
need to think 2, 3 seasons ahead now.
they definitely do. If you're looking for short term fix at Glentoran, you really, really need to think again. It's not going to happen for me. It hasn't happened in the whole time that Ali Pur's been there with the investment, other than one Irish Cup win. If Glentoran can just stabilise at the back with Wilson, McCulloch, McLean, who are as good a back three as you're going to get, and then build it ahead of that, they've got a chance. But there's 30 points behind Larne. 30 points. That is a massive gap to try, and it's not going to close in one season, I don't see.
Saturday saw this championship title race get sewn up in a slightly dramatic but also not thrilling kind of way. Draws between Portadown and Dundalk and a 1-1 draw between Bangor and Institute sealed the deal for the Ports. They're playing top flight football once again next year. They turn it around 1 year out of the top flight and they're back in the Nifl Premiership. Of course, that then means that Newry City's time in the top flight is now over after 2 years. They are relegated. Stick with Portadown. They were such a story last year of just their incredible drop. The decline was very dramatic. And Niall Curry takes over the team in the middle of it last year. You can't save them. And they have to rebuild that team with quite a bit of Premiership experience. It wasn't a sterling season from start to finish, let's just say. They have excitement in the Cup, and both League Cup getting to the final, and as well as decent run in the Irish Cup. So overall success because they're champions and they are up. They've done the business, and now they can also plan ahead for next year. A lot of people will say, yes, great, big squad, whatever, and big fan base, great to see them back in the league, but ultimately they had to do it on the pitch, and they did that.
Yeah, like you say, it wasn't exactly thrilling in the end. When you win a league title by claiming a draw and then waiting for another game to end, but they got the job done, and that's what it's all about, mate. How you win leagues, how you get promoted. It's just about doing it. It was a little bit odd at Shamrock Park on Saturday when the game ended 1-1, and the only outcome in the other game for it ever going up was a draw in Institute and Bangor, and there was a full 2 minutes between the Portadown game ending and the confirmation coming on the Radio Ulster that the game at the Brandywell had finished the draw as well before the celebration started. It was odd being there in those circumstances. And the only thing I could relate it to would be going back to 30 years ago on that dramatic day in 1994 when Portadown and Glenavon drew at Moorview while the game at Field at Windsor Park had already ended, and they're waiting for the Glenavon Portadown game to finish. And again, that was a draw, which meant Linfield won the league. Slightly different circumstances than it being a promotion rather than a Premiership title win. That was how I was relating it. Portadown got the job done in the end, and they got it done because they went on a great run just at the right time. It's like the London Marathon yesterday. It's like a marathon runner just kicking on in the final stages. Portadown won 7 out of the last 9 games. That's the time to put that run together.
I think fans of top flight teams will have seen a bit of this Portadown side from their League Cup run, playing against Cliftonville as well in the Irish Cup quarter final. How will they do next year? Because they have quite a couple of recognisable names. Lee Chapman, Ryan Mays, Aaron Trainer, Gary Thompson. You have Paul McElroy. I know he's been injured for a lot of the year. leading the line for them. They've had their struggles, and Niall Curry has a reputation for bringing in a whole lot every summer and somehow making it work. There's been various different reasons for this, but what was it, 3 relegations in the space of 15 years, about 5 seasons outside of the top flight in that time. They have been promoted now, again, third time as champions going up. That most recent time, they didn't really hit the ground running in the top flight and they slowly petered out and never really got their affairs in order. Would you be confident that them going up, that they'll be in a position to try and push on and have, not exactly, because I think it's been a remarkable season for Loughgall, but a Loughgall style season where they're not too worried about it, or do you think they'll struggle next year as well?
Loughgall are probably the benchmark now, aren't they? And what they've done very, very well. Crystal ball stuff, it's difficult to predict because you just don't know what Niall will do in the transfer market. I do think he needs to bring in a few more players, but that'll be okay because Niall loves doing that. He brought in 5 in January, which he said was a big, big reason why they got up. I do think he needs to add. But he has said platform now to go out and bring some real quality players to the club. And if he can do that, they definitely have a chance. But I do think it's going to be really, really tough. Uri have obviously got relegated. If Ballymena can stay up in the playoff, they'll improve. And then the other teams in the bottom 6, it's going to be tough because Glenavon, they've already signed Reece Marshall. That's a bit of a statement if they're going to be able to match that type of player with the rest that they bring in. All done very, very well. Dungannon have done well, and Rodney, I would expect, will add, and he'll add the type of player that he can get playing the type of football that he wants, and then Carrick just keep on going. They keep getting better year on year, and with the investment they have, um, they might be hard to catch for any of the other their bottom 6. The bottom 6 next season could be really, really tight.
There's only
Um,
11 top flight spaces that will keep you there every year, and that's
yeah,
if you can do the business as well. As only 10 where you're safe and you're home and hosed. So there's not a lot of wiggle room, and they're going to have to try and unstick or move one of the teams that are ahead of them. And broadly, they've had decent enough seasons elsewhere or look to improve. Like I looked there and I wanted to go back and look at the interview that Niall Curry gave last year, because the Portadown pretty much I've been relegated and promoted the same weekend, but a year apart.
yeah,
And I went to go see the interview with Niall, and of course it's like one of your lowest moments. You've been relegated, you've got a whole other year, you got to try and rebuild the team, and he's got this air of frustration but defiance. He's going to do it. He knows what's ahead of him, and then of course, then in the post-match interview from being champions, he's elated, everything's great, it's the high of football. And of course that could be flipped next year unless they go in and have almost a bigger task ahead of them. So will Portadown learn their lessons? What will they learn from what's happened in Uri and Ballymena this year? Can they attract the players when Glenavon are investing? Carrick are happy to invest. I think there's a real strength that Loughgall side, that even though if they do get picked off slightly team wise, I think they've got a great base that will hard to be unmoved. So they'll be delighted as Portadown fans not at the rate of their parade for them to be back up and at it. But this is a far more tough top flight than what was a couple of years ago, and clearly mistakes were made in the squad building of that team previously that they will have to rectify, and I think it will be a bigger step up into the top flight next year. So they'll not want it to be a repeat where it's they want a yo-yo, relegated, promoted. But they got there, they done that. Perhaps based on all the results in the cups, they might enjoy playing against all the top flight teams that they actually did beat in those cups this year. But it's job done, despite the fact that it wasn't a ruthless league season from the Ports.
and they lost 10 games, and they still could lose at 11th and still have won the league. And if you're doing that at championship level, you can't really be afford to be doing that in the Premier League, in the Premiership, and expect to be comfortable staying up. The one thing,
Because many have poo-pooed their title run this year in the sense that, Yes, they've done it and they've beat out the other teams, but without looking at the financials, it's clear they had the biggest budget in the league. They invested. They might have had a decent budget when it comes to actually being a top flight team, and they've brought the fans back, so that helps a fair bit. But they've struggled to get up despite having the biggest budget, and that will not be the case next year.
Well, budgets don't win you leagues. It's performances on the pitch. Yeah, you can relate it to having the better players to get you the better performances. We've all seen that championship and the inconsistency because everyone beats everyone else. And Portadown, like I said, have gone up because they won 7 of the last 9. And that's once you get that little bit of consistency, and you can go ahead and take that title. One thing I would say about Niall Curry is that on the last couple of occasions when he's got teams promoted, I go back to Ards before he left to go to Portadown the first time around, and then when he was at Carrick, he had Ards pretty much safe before he left to come to Portadown, and that was November, December. So quite early on, he'd got a really, really good start with Ards, and they were in a good place. And he did exactly the same thing when he got Carrick promoted. Started the season well, and there was never any danger of them going down. That's what he's got to try to repeat.
Just on that note, how many times has he won the championship? All those lock all ones. I know he didn't win it with Carrick. Did he win it with Ards to get up?
At least once.
An amazing record.
Yeah, he's a championship specialist, which is why Portadown hired him both times because he got the he had he took them down both times, but they were already on the brink even before he took over. But he was employed with the idea of, well, if he keeps his upgrade and he doesn't, he's the man to get us back up, and that's what he's done. So he's got to try and replicate those starts that he had with Ards and Carrick, but having done it before, can't rule it out. And if he can get Portadown in the 10th place comfortably, not long into the season, looking up and seeing what they can achieve. We all know what Niall's like. Niall will have the belief that he can push for a European playoff next season, and he may not be saying that type of thing publicly and set himself a target to get knocked down, but yeah, he'll have that belief because that's just what he's like, and he won't limit Portadown and put it like that. He won't be saying, yeah, we'll be happy to finish 10th.
I spoke about the post match interview. One thing that stood out to me was he made a clear point to call out detractors in his eyes. He claims called for his head, perhaps. Around Christmas time, we all get our motivation from different places. That clearly had irked him at the time. Was there drama? Was there calls for that? Or
There were, yeah, there's when you lose a derby game on Boxing Day at Anna, which is a place where Portadown don't want to be playing derby games, and they want to be playing their derbies against Glenavon. But when you lose that game on Boxing Day, and lose it in the manner that they did, which was pretty poor, yeah, you're always going to get detractors at that stage. But now it was always all about the context that he knew that he had players injured, he knew he had players that were out completely, he had players playing on one leg for him, and he knew that he had players lined up to come in. And once he got them in, he was expecting them to kick on. But you even go back to a lot earlier in the season, just a few games in, Portadown lost to Ballyclare, lost to Bangor, lost to the Welders 3 in a row in the tail end of August, beginning of September, and then we're 1-0 down at home down after suffering 3 defeats in a row, 1-0 down to their local rivals. And even at that stage, people were questioning. Now they go on and win 4-1 that day, and then go on a bit of a run of winning 3 or 4 in a row after that. Um, but that's just the nature of the championship, how precarious it is. And 1 or 2 defeats drops you down, 1 or 2 wins you back up. And again, going back, the consistency at the end of the season has delivered. But I spoke to Luke Wilson after the game on Saturday, and he sort of confirmed what I had thought, that the cups were a distraction. The cups were getting in the way a little bit of what the main mission was for the season. But at the same time, they built confidence. When you go out and you win 6 games against Premiership teams, it's got to build confidence. And when you go to Windsor Park and play Linfield in the final, are still They were still in the game right to the very end. It was 3-1, but they certainly didn't roll over 3-0 down. Yeah, that gave them a belief. Fed into the final stage of the season when all they had to do was concentrate on the league.
You talk about playing derbies with Anna United. That still could be on the cards, as we still have one game to be played, or at least one fixture round to be played in the championship. It's happening this Friday evening. Portadown are sitting there happy partying, saying that they will play a role in who gets that final promotion playoff spot. They play Institute, and just down the road you have Anna United playing against Bangor. Dundella's up there, but you can kind of count them out when it comes to this playoff. They will be irrelevant. Doesn't matter if they finish second or third or whatever. Who are you backing there? My gut probably says Anna have the momentum. They have the recent results, but that is a stormer of a tie between them and Bangor. That's the decider.
Anna's form is absolutely unbelievable. I think even if you go back to January, but particularly since the split, they turned Portadown over and then went and done them a favour by beating Institute. But they've won 4 games in a row since the split. It's fantastic. But overall, I've never known a season like this in covering Irish League football when all 3 divisions have been so hard fought, so interesting, so exciting, right up until the penultimate games of the season. Now that we've got all 3 divisions settled, albeit the Premiership and the PIL on goal difference at the minute. But I think this is what the split brings you. I remember it was established. We're well over 20 years of the split being established. I remember it was dropped for a while when the league was expanded to 16 before it was cut again. There were detractors about the split because people had seen it in Scotland and they weren't big fans. But I think anyone who wasn't in favour of it back in the day is surely long since convinced. And if they weren't, they must be now this season. The Premiership still has something to be decided in terms of the European playoff championship. That championship playoff place is just set up wonderfully on Friday night. As Portadown hadn't have got over the line on Saturday, you look at it, 2 games in the same town on the same night with so much riding on them, and it's set up brilliantly as it is. But I would have just added another layer to it completely.
Well, as I said last week, if Institute had won that game and Portadown drew, which they did, Institute would be coming to town looking to not only win, but could then win the title on goal difference. That would have been one of the more unlikely results. I can see most teams get it. I think Institute will be the one that will be the most surprising because they'll need to beat Portadown and hope that Anna and Bangor do what Bangor and Institute did by drawing. Bangor's all in the box seat because all they need is a draw and it's theirs, of course, bar Institute winning, so they have that advantage due to goal difference over Anna United. But Anna have got all these results, and what people might not be aware of, they did them all away from home. They've done all these away from home. This is their first home split game. It would be an immense story for Anna United to do it because it would be the third attempt to get up based on the playoff. But this is a team whose ground was underwater a couple of months ago. So what they've been able to do has been excellent, especially this late run. And I think just the way they're playing, I do back them. But, Bangor will have a lot to say for themselves there. So still a lot to play for still in the championship.
I've liked the look of Bangor when I've seen them a couple of times. Portadown and particularly in the Irish Cup game. But yeah, it's what a story for them. They weren't even sure if they're going to be able to play at their ground. So to be in this position is fantastic for them. And they've put it up to absolutely everybody they've come up against. And yeah, it's excited for Friday night. But there's also I was looking at the Premier Intermediate League, and the race for the playoff there is phenomenal. There's potentially 3 teams chasing that playoff, and the goal difference is really, really tight as well. So Saturday afternoon, that's where it could be at because everything else is kind of decided by then because we've got the titles all won and the championship will be done by Friday night.
Some people might believe that Portadown will be sitting coasting, celebrating, and I'm sure Friday night will be a massive celebration for them and their fans, relaxing knowing that it's all tied up. But it seems the Portadown are unlikely to roll over against Institute due to previous interactions earlier on this season? Explain to the uninformed.
Yeah, Kevin Derry didn't take too kindly to the the aftermath of the last minute winner up at the Brandywell at the start of March, and that came down to I think maybe some things that were said on the sideline, and then Portadown fans would be spilled over the fence onto the pitch. Kevin Derry's been around the game such a long time. He's got to understand the context of scoring a last minute winner, and if he doesn't, I don't think I can explain it to him. Given he's such an experienced guy that I think there's might be a wee bit of feistiness in this game because of that. Portadown both wanted it over.
It's been alluded to me that they will not be rolling over
I don't think they
Portadown.
will, which makes it all more exciting given what's going to be going on the other side of town. Yeah, it could be a really really fun night.
Big Portadown party on Friday night if Anna was to get through, and then Portadown will be celebrating lifting a rather meek championship trophy, I must say. We need to get a big impress. I saw at the Football Writers this big, massive one for the women's Premiership, and you have the Gibson Cup there. I think the championship, now that's all getting excited, we need a better cup. It's not that fun.
Yeah, that women's Premiership trophy is very impressive. It puts all the other ones into the shade, even the Gibson Cup, which I don't think I don't know for sure, but I don't think clubs will want to change that because it's such a traditional trophy. Yeah, the championship one is a little bit underwhelming, would you say? But it's not about the trophy; it's about actually winning it and getting back up.
Football nerds disagree. Trophy's very important. We will argue about that another day. Stuart, we sat beside each other, looked lovingly into each other's eyes on Saturday night down at the Crown Plaza because I am now an industry shill going to the NA Football Awards dinner. I'm reminded of this as I look on the side bedroom floor that I record this in, and I see my tuck still in a heap. We have winners. We had Team of the Years, which I talked about a wee bit on the second pod last week. Yes, 2 pods last week. If you want to go listen back to them, just hear about some of our discussion before it. Headlines are Player of the Year was Cal McLean. Championship Player of the Year was Sean Leopard from Institute. Hipster Choice, big settled defender. I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in him. Pomeroy from Limavady. He's the PIL Player of the Year, as Limavady are now going to be playing in the Championship next year. Well deserved there. And then Manager of the Year, Dean Smith from Loughgall. Big, I wouldn't call it surprise, but a big sentimental victory, I think, from a lot of people's point of view. What a great season he's had. And then Young Player of the Year was Benji McGee from Loughgall. He beat out Shay Kearney from Cliftonville and Ethan McGee from Linfield. I know you've been a part of the Football Writers for a long time, chairman during COVID times, so you knew what the crack was going into it. I know how these are all decided, mix of managers voting and the Football Writers, which I am not one of. Any surprises? Any quirks that caught your eye from the awards being given out? Very nice little Volley things they got. I'm not complaining about the trophies there being given out on Saturday night.
Yeah, they are a nice trophy. Yeah, no surprises for me because without telling too many tales out of school, I can tell people who I voted for, and I voted for the Player of the Year, Young Player of the Year, and Manager of the Year who won them. They got my vote. So you asked me a few weeks ago, the last time I was on with you, who my Player of the Year was, and at that stage it was Kyle McLean, and nothing happened in between times for me to change my mind. Um, he's had a very very solid season. Um, Benji McGee, Benji maybe dropped off a little bit. Um, and I don't know if that was a distraction because of all the hype that was around in January. I think he maybe had picked up a knock at one stage. He then missed a couple of games with being away with the under 21s. But that's a double edged sword because he'd done well enough to get that call up and get that reward. Then he comes back in and he played against Glenavon a couple of weeks ago and scored a really really good striker's goal. Really really well taken. Benji definitely deserved that award, but he's a striker and goals get you noticed. So that's well deserved for him. Um,
If you can reveal some form of inside baseball, is it one vote, one person? And then once you get the three nominees, are they just, or four, are they just the people with the most amount of votes, or do you then get your nominees and then everybody votes again?
It's one vote per person, and the top three are the three, and then the other top person in that vote. There's no second vote.
So there's like one vote throughout it, and then you ring fence the top three. There's no second kind of voting.
No, there's no second. No second vote. Um,
Interesting.
and there may be question marks over Dean Smith as manager of the year, which I completely understand. Normally,
It's a tough competition to really nail down players, manager, you know.
normally the manager who wins the league wins manager of the year with complete justification. But I do think there are times when you don't measure success just by trophies. For Dean Smith, they've got lock all up, and their safety wasn't confirmed until the game before the split, but they were safe before Christmas. And to have done that is an achievement. Is it a bigger achievement than Larne in the league? That's up for debate. Um, just in my opinion, Dean deserved recognition for getting that. With every respect to them, they're a tiny club. They're the smallest settlement in Europe as a top flight football club. So that tells you how tiny a club they are. To be going and competing with the big boys, and until a couple of weeks ago, they were the only team that had beaten Larne this season. And I would suggest that if you ask any manager in the league, they won't have enjoyed playing at Loughgall this season. They'll have got it tough every time they've gone there. So Dean, say I voted for him, so of course I'm going to justify that. And I think he's justified in winning the award because of where he's brought to.
The reason why I like Dean Smith as the winner, as much as I was hyping up a lot of what David Healy's done from a boring X's and O's manager doing managerial things point of view, and of course he could be sitting here, or could have been manager post that, who won the league and won the League Cup and won the Irish Cup, and obviously that isn't going to happen now, but the League Cup and Irish Cup could still be on its way and sitting at Windsor Park. The reason why I like Dean Smith there is because I think he also has done things where I've noticeably seen him make big calls in games, change up his teams, react to tough opposition, get the best out of some players who were bit parts at other clubs, come in and work really well in that system. His ability to bring those players together and make it work as a solid team. You see Loughgall, and they're a very assured, solid team, but also they like to play football and it can be exciting. It hasn't always worked out. I think they've been inconsistent at times, and I think sometimes they've been naive, but exciting, getting a lot out of the players, over expectation. I don't mind that at all as him being manager of the year, and it's a great story as well. Young player of the year, I think Benji McGee absolutely was the one. Goals are near top of the league, one of the top goal scorers in that team. His emergence, his influence on the side, and yes, bar maybe the stretch near the end hasn't been sterling for all the reasons that you brought up. I feel as though it's been a longest stretch, longest period of time, and as much as McGee has been excellent stepping up the Linfield, I don't think I've seen the same influence, and Shea Kearney's somewhat of the same, has been great, but maybe just didn't have the high highs that the other players had. Benji McGee rightfully there. Player of the year, discussed a lot. It's a throw up. It is 2 years in a row where a midfield player who is well respected, having a career year, scoring goals when perhaps they hadn't done before, have won it. I have no issue with McLean winning it at all. And I've been online about it. I'm having a bit of fun with it, but I'm clear, and I'll do my own player of the year for this podcast, team of the year, and all the rest of it. I'm very clear. My player of the year is Levi Ives, and it's based on the eye test, which I think he is integral to that team. He is exceptional out wide. He is brilliant on the ball, but he's such an attacking threat. But you add in the stats if you want to play the stats game. 20 or so goals conceded while he was playing in that team. Biggest sister for Larne, 11 goals this year. Popped up with 3 himself. First time in that team. I think he was the standout performer in that Larne side. An amazing Larne side. And in this year where defence was being key, I think he was brilliant. An attack and defence, all round was excellent. And I think it was his year. So, wasn't to be, but, I've been on this Ives train for a long time and I ain't getting off it yet.
Yeah, fair enough. I think he's had a good season. He was in the team of the year. Um, probably um probably weren't too many other votes for other left backs. Given the season that he's had, Kyle McLean, he delivered a lot of big goals in big games, big performances in big games. He was playing man of the match in the League Cup final. Scored a cracking goal in the Irish Cup semi final against Glentoran. And if Linfield are going to go and win a cup double, he's going to have to be a big player in the Irish Cup final against Cliftonville. But he'll do that with the confidence that he'll take from his performances this season, which won him the award.
Yep, fun night. Really enjoyed it. It was nice to chat to random people in clubs that I had never chat to before. Sometimes you're chatting to random people and you find out, I don't know, if they're chairman of X club. So that was nice. So if there was a few people out there, I'll not name them, that came up and said hello to me. It's very nice to chat to you. It's kind of strange to get your head around sometimes. Like usually I'm just chatting to you out there, but to kind of get your head around of X might be listening, whatever, Bernadette the kids or something, like it's all. But it was very nice. Very nice evening. I very much enjoyed it. Awards are awards. We'll all disagree. And the good thing about whenever I give out my, not really awards, my digital post of the year, there's only Academy of one. So I can disagree with myself, and I often do. And I'll eventually get round to that, as we have a couple of games this weekend. We'll not really go through them because, it's complete throw up. Not a huge amount of stuff on the line. Probably talking about the way this podcast will move going forward. Next week, we'll review the games that happened, maybe get into a bit more depth of where the league is after all 38 games. We'll then also have a preview for the Irish Cup. And then after that, really popular last year, after the Irish Cup, we'll be reviewing that with a pod 2 weeks from now. And I can then look back at all my predictions that I made at the start of the season, like I did last year with Michael Clark. It'll be different this year, and we'll do a big review of the year then. So lots to still look forward to, even though the league is wrapping up this year. Stuart, you've been a real key part to the pod this year. I appreciate all the times you've jumped on, a voice of reason and of expertise. As always, with the season wrapping up, do you move on to different sports now and how you fill your column inches?
Well, this is the busy time of the year for me, where the ice hockey season just finished, but the women's season is just kicking off. So we're just about to get into that, and that's set up for an exciting time as well. Um, Again, we traditionally expect Glentoran and Cliftonville to challenge as they have done the last couple of years. But Linfield have started really, really well in the All Ireland. With a really good win against Bohemians there at the weekend. Some new signings on board and a new manager in Ram McConville. Um, so Linfield, who have been in transition for a little while with a young squad, everyone has said if the Linfield kept that squad together, they could do very well. They haven't managed to keep it all together. They've lost one or two. Um, but they've added some experience, they've added some quality, as well. So the women's premiership could be quite interesting this season. Maybe not the two horse races we've had the last couple of years, which will be good because I've covered over the years enough one horse type races, which are quite dull. Two horse races are a little bit better. When you have a three horse race, a bit like the championship. It's exciting, it's interesting, and you can't take your eyes off it because every game has an impact.
Excellent. Well, there's plenty of football still to be played. Like I said, Irish Cup on the way, European playoffs on the way, and I'm sure there'll be some mad transfer shenanigans going on. So stick with us. We will still be with you every week for a couple of weeks for now, regardless if my wife believes that the season's coming up to an end this weekend. Stuart, how can people find the stuff that you do?
Yeah, online on the Belfast Telegraph website, on print, Telegraph, Sunday Live, and on Twitter at Stuart D McKinley. Find it all out there. If you want to ask me any questions about what I think, you feel free. Because like on here, I'm always happy to throw in a few of my opinions on the game. Not everyone will always agree, but we can always have a good conversation about things.
Fantastic. It's always good to have a conversation with you, Stu. Appreciate all you've done for the pod this season. All the best.
Very welcome. Thank you.
If there's too much to say after all that, like I said, I've got some really fun episodes on the way as the Irish League wraps itself up for this season. Had some cracking episodes, I must say, last week. 2 of them covering lots of really interesting topics with Stephen Alexander and Lewis Bennett, respectively. And then, of course, I thought this week was pretty sweet as well. If you want to show a bit of love to the podcast, you know you can do that. You can do it in a free way if you wish. If you want to go to whatever your podcast player is, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever, just go to the homepage of Kicking Match on that platform. It'll be a little bar, a little couple of dots, a wee wheel, hit it. You can subscribe, you can follow the podcast. Like it, see, it costs you £0 and it means you get the most up-to-date information about when the latest podcasts drop. And sometimes they're a bit irregular, different times. I throw 2 out in a week, like to keep you on your toes. Been a fun season. I really appreciate chatting to quite a few people actually over the past few days. Say they're listeners. I very much appreciate that. It's very, very nice. If you do happen to see me randomly, say hello. I like to say hello to people. It doesn't matter if you're a listener or not, but I imagine you probably would be if you say hello. That's me done. I'd say until next time, and will be next time. I'll see you soon, and thanks for listening. Bye.